Martin's hands didn't shake when he fired me. Mine didn't either. But the room went quiet in that particular way it does right before a car crash, when everyone sees it coming and pretends it's not already mid-impact. He didn't even look up, just slid the paper across the polished oak table like it was a receipt. "You've grown too comfortable," he said, his voice smooth and empty. "We need someone more aggressive." No preamble, no explanation, not even a bullet point list of my supposed sins. After 18 years, I got a single line and a corporate smile. I stared at the paper for 3 full seconds before folding it in half, crease sharp, deliberate. Then again, corner to corner. I tucked it in my bag like a grocery list and stood. No outburst, no performance. I simply walked out. But I made sure to look him straight in the eye as I passed. That kind of silence cuts deeper than shouting ever could. If you've made it this far into the story, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It means more than you know and helps us keep these stories coming. Let's get back to it. The receptionist blinked when I passed by. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyeing the badge I dropped on the desk like it might start ticking. "Apparently, I'm too comfortable," I said, pushing through the door before she could respond. I stepped out into the cold. The skyline shimmered like it was mocking me. Glass, steel, and millions of invisible lines of code I'd helped stitch together across a decade and a half. Back when we worked out of a rented office above a dusty bookstore, and the servers were actual machines, not just floating cloud clusters named after fruit and birds. I'd built every layer of that firm's infrastructure from the ground up. Container flows, legacy handoffs, credential locking, all routed through systems I'd authored, hardened, and maintained. They called me the quiet glue. Turns out glue gets scraped when the walls are repainted. I didn't cry. Not on the street, not in the elevator, not in the parking garage where the gate already stopped recognizing my license plate. I just sat in my car, staring at the dashboard, wondering how 18 years of institutional memory could be erased by a man who still needed me to reset his VPN 3 months ago. He was a legacy kid. Martin. The type who walked in with a fresh MBA and a vision, inherited from a father who founded the company and now only showed up for quarterly earnings calls and golf tournaments. I'd known Martin when he was an intern who mixed up IP addresses and almost downed our test environment. I covered for him then. Taught him the architecture, layer by layer, watched him rise, bypassing veterans, wielding buzzwords like weapons. And today, he decided I was redundant. Funny thing about redundancy, if you remove the last support beam, the whole damn roof caves in. My phone buzzed. I didn't even glance at it. Probably HR asking me to return my key fob. Or maybe legal, making sure I'd signed their neat little release. But when it buzzed again, and again, I glanced down. The name lit up the screen like a flare in a blackout. Alec Trent, CTO of Redbridge Systems, our biggest rival. I stared for a second, then swiped to answer. I didn't say a word. "Cal?" he said. The nickname caught me off guard. No one at my company ever used it. Only people from the old days did. People who remembered when my title was just lead sysops métier, and I was the one everyone called when the production line caught fire. "I just heard," Alex said. "Is it true?" Still, I didn't speak. He continued, his voice lower now. "I want you to come to Redbridge. We'll double whatever they paid you. No interviews, no red tape, just join us. Immediately." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I hit the speakerphone button and held the phone in my lap as I leaned back in the seat. I didn't notice Martin walking by in the parking structure until he stopped in his tracks, seeing Alex's name on the screen. Smug bastard actually smirked, like I wouldn't have the guts. But then came the other voice, older, sharper, one I hadn't heard in years. "Martin," it said, cutting in through the call on Alex's end, "please tell me you didn't just let go of the one person keeping us ahead of Redbridge." Martin paled. The smirk vanished. He looked directly at me, but I didn't flinch. He turned on his heel, moving fast now, back toward the elevator. I didn't follow. I just sat there watching the skyline again. My skyline. The one I wired, secured, and scaled. Let them scramble. Let them realize what they'd done. I wasn't angry. I was already halfway gone. The funny thing is, I still remember the smell of that old office. Fresh paint, burnt coffee, and the lingering scent of books from the store below, like knowledge trying to seep through the floorboards. Back then, we didn't have departments. We had corners. My workspace was a folding table next to a window that didn't shut properly. My first project was untangling the VPN from some duct-taped mess of static IPs and dusty routers someone bought secondhand from a college auction. I stayed past midnight that first week, not because anyone asked, but because I saw the mess and knew I could fix it. By month 3, I wasn't just the one who fixed things. I was the one who built them. Bit by bit, script by script. I set up our first credential vault, wrote the foundation for our CI/CD pipeline, and created the layered permission grid that let our little Frankenstein startup pass its first compliance audit without crying in front of the inspector. Everyone was so proud. Martin's dad even gave me a bonus check with a handwritten note. "We'd be nowhere without you." Fast forward to now, and now being the morning I got canned like expired soup, none of that history mattered. The backbone I spent 18 years reinforcing with sweat, coffee, and 5 a.m. log replays, apparently it was too rigid for Martin's new agile vision. His words, not mine. As if good architecture is supposed to bend with every trendy breeze from Silicon Valley. Martin used to send me Slack messages asking why his Git pull kept failing. I used to fix his merge conflicts behind the scenes without telling him, just to save him the embarrassment. And that was before he even got promoted, back when he still pretended to care how things actually worked. When he finally inherited the corner office and the CEO title, I didn't flinch. I didn't beg for recognition or adjust the way I operated. I figured if I kept the systems clean, kept the audits tight, and made sure the updates didn't trigger alarms at 3 a.m., my work would speak for itself. Turns out, my work spoke too quietly. I packed my office in 12 minutes flat. Years of contributions condensed into one small cardboard box. A mug, a framed photo of the original team, 8 of us in front of a whiteboard we thought was revolutionary, and a thumb drive. Not with code. Just a text file of quotes from meetings over the years that made me laugh, like the time Martin asked what a daemon was and then got spooked when I told him one was running on every server, or the time his dad, during a lunch run, said, "Cal's the kind of person who builds quietly and leaves loudly." Guess I only got half of that right. Outside, I leaned against my car and stared at the skyline I'd helped digitize. Every tower had a line of code I could trace back to a decision I'd made, a failover I'd scripted, a server instance I'd tuned for performance. To anyone else, it was just glass and metal. To me, it was memory and logic. The city didn't owe me anything, but the company did. And Martin, he inherited a house with secret passageways. He never once asked who built them. I glanced down at my phone, still buzzing with alerts from internal systems. Auto pings, missed cron job notifications, heartbeat skips. My signature was still on every alert schema. The machines were calling out, but I wasn't their keeper anymore. Then the real buzz came. Caller ID, Alec Trent. I stared at the name for a full second. Redbridge's CTO. A man I hadn't spoken to in 4 years, not since we debated Kubernetes security practices at a conference happy hour and agreed to disagree over whiskey and shrimp cocktail. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up, not because I was desperate, because something told me Martin had just made the most expensive decision of his career, and the clock had started ticking. Cal? It hit me like a voice from a past life. Familiar, calm, and the tiniest bit amused, like he already knew the answer but wanted to watch me say it out loud. Alec Trent, CTO of Redbridge Systems, our closest rival for the last decade and the one man Martin spent the better part of his early executive life trying and failing to outmaneuver. "I just heard," Alec said. "Is it true?" I didn't answer, not because I was unsure, but because I knew that letting the silence stretch was more telling than any confirmation. You only pause like that when someone struck a nerve deep enough to echo. Alec let the quiet hang for a breath, then went straight for the jugular. "We'll double whatever they paid you. No red tape, no HR song and dance. We'll courier the contract today. Just say the word." Still, I didn't speak. Instead, I tapped the speakerphone button and set the phone down on the armrest beside me, letting his voice fill the car. Something about hearing him make the offer out loud, unfiltered, unflinching, felt like the final chord in a symphony Martin never even knew he was conducting. Fate's got a sick sense of humor, because right at that moment, I saw movement through the rear-view mirror. Martin. Striding across the parking garage, AirPods in, scrolling something with that same smug half-grin he always wore after firing someone he thought didn't matter. He glanced toward me, then stopped. He saw the phone, saw the name, and for a second, I swear his smirk twitched. He thought I'd shut it down. that I'd scoff or wave it off like any loyal employee should. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let Alec keep talking. I've cleared a team for you already. You'll get autonomy, budget control, and project oversight. We need you, Cal. Redbridge needs you. Martin froze, hands still in his pockets. I saw his jaw tighten. He wasn't smirking anymore, just waiting. Then the other voice cut in. Martin. No greeting, no warmth, just that sharp, gravel-worn edge that made junior managers straighten their backs and even VPs tuck their egos. His father. The founder. The line crackled just slightly, like even the air between the words was holding its breath. Please tell me, the voice said slowly, that you didn't just let go of the one person keeping us ahead of Redbridge. Martin didn't respond. Not to the voice, not to me. He looked like a man realizing the brake line he'd cut wasn't on someone else's car. I turned the volume up a notch, not for drama, but so the point could land without me saying a damn thing. Do you understand what you've done? His father continued. Do you understand what it means to hand the keys to your architecture, to your future roadmap, to our biggest threat? The silence on Martin's end said everything. He had nothing. No defense, no strategy. Just a pair of expensive shoes squeaking on cold concrete and the weight of a decision that couldn't be walked back. He started to open his mouth, then stopped. Good call. Because even if he tried to spin it, paint it as a strategic pivot or cultural reset, nothing he said would matter now. Not with Alex still speaking, still pitching, still planning the next chapter with me in the lead seat. I'll send the initial terms in the next 15 minutes, Alex said. You don't need to answer now. Just know it's yours. The moment you say yes. Then, more quietly, as if he knew who might be listening, I've been waiting for this opportunity since the day they promoted that kid. The call ended. Clean. Final. Martin was still staring at me, the same way someone stares at a machine they've unplugged, only to realize it was powering the whole building. I didn't wave, didn't gloat, just looked back with the same expression I gave him in that conference room, the one that said, you didn't just lose an employee, you lost the map, the compass, and the person who knew where the bodies were buried and which servers they were buried under. And now? Now I had options, and he had consequences. I got home just before noon. The sunlight was spilling across the kitchen tile like nothing had happened, like the world outside hadn't shifted on its axis. I didn't take off my coat. I just sat at the table, laptop already open, contract already waiting. Alex's team had sent it while I was still in the garage. 12-month engagement, full autonomy, direct reporting line to him, and a clean budget. No layered approvals, no office politics, no run it by Martin first, and I didn't even bring up the money. They offered double before I could ask. That told me everything I needed to know. I e-signed with steady hands. 5 minutes later, I dropped my phone on silent. Not off, just out of reach, because I knew what was coming. Martin called once, twice. By the third, I stopped counting. His numbers stayed on my lock screen like a rash that wouldn't go away. Irritating, avoidable, and ultimately self-inflicted. Around 3:20 p.m., I got a text from Lydia, our lead auditor. Or rather, their lead auditor now. Cal, are you available? Something's wrong with the update push. No one can verify the patch integrity, and we're 5 days from queue close. I stared at the message for a full minute, then locked my screen again. They didn't understand that I hadn't just built the process, I'd woven it into muscle memory. The entire patch management framework was held together by dependencies no one had ever documented properly, because I was the documentation. When they upgraded systems last year, I'd built an adaptive script in an older language. Go, wrapped with some custom shell bindings. No one liked touching it. It wasn't flashy, didn't have a pretty UI, but it worked, reliably, every time, until I was gone. They probably thought they could swap me out like a bad fuse, but what they pulled was the main breaker. I made a cup of tea and sat on the balcony. The city below hummed with its usual rhythm, honking cars, footsteps on concrete, occasional sirens slicing through the distance. And somewhere in an office I'd helped build, a team of DevOps engineers were staring at a terminal they didn't know how to tame. I pictured the Slack channels blowing up. Does anyone have access to Cal's scripts? Where did she store the rollback logic? Why does the build freeze when it hits phase 3? And the best one, I imagined, came from Martin himself. Can someone explain why our compliance tool is flagging our own patch as a threat? I didn't laugh, but I smiled. Around 6:00 p.m., Alec messaged, "Welcome to Redbridge. Let me know when you want to meet the team. No rush." No rush. I was already planning my first build. I knew which systems I wanted to overhaul. I'd been mapping them in my head for years. All the flaws I'd seen in our old stack, Martin's stack now, I could finally fix. Clean, secure, efficient. This time, without politics slowing down every decision. At 6:17 p.m. Meyasu, another call came through. Unknown number. I answered on instinct, expecting a recruiter maybe, but it was familiar. Cal, hey, it's Darren from compliance. Look, we've got a flag from the licensing engine. Something about the sandbox permissions you set last year. No one can get into the virtual environment for audit replay, and the credential chain loops back to your key. Pause. And, legal says the approval log shows your name as the final custodian. Is that... Can we override that? I took a sip of tea. Not my system anymore, I said quietly, and not my problem. He started to stammer, but I'd already ended the call. They never asked how things worked when I was there. Now they could figure it out without me. The press release hit just after 9 Honik a.m., timed perfectly to land in inboxes before the first coffee refill. Redbridge's logo, clean and sharp against a white background, with a headline that didn't shout. It just stood there and watched the ripple start. Cal Brennan joins Redbridge Systems as lead systems architect to oversee next-generation scalability and infrastructure development. That was it. No buzzwords, no gushing statements, just facts. They didn't need flair, the name was enough. The photo was even simpler. Me in a navy button-up, arms crossed, expression neutral. No dramatic lighting, no overproduced boardroom backdrop. Just a clean shot from my first onboarding meeting, snapped on a phone by someone who clearly understood that power doesn't need to be loud to be lethal. And it landed hard. By mid-morning, my LinkedIn feed looked like someone had cracked a dam. Dozens of connection requests, mentions, a few confused DMs from people I hadn't spoken to in years, asking if the post was real or some I-generated rumor. One even messaged, "Wait, weren't you just at Onyx?" I didn't reply, because someone else did, for me. Alec reposted the announcement with one line above it. Some decisions make themselves. Within the hour, the shock started spreading. Our largest mutual client, a massive logistics chain that both Onyx and Redbridge had been vying for over the years, sent an internal request titled Reassessment of Current Vendor Alignment. That's corporate speak for, why are we still paying the people who just lost their architect to their biggest rival? The same afternoon, an anonymous tip surfaced on the industry forums about lead architect turnover at Onyx and its potential impact on Q4 system performance. It wasn't me, I didn't leak anything. But it didn't matter. The court of public opinion had a new narrative, and Martin's name was no longer the one getting spotlighted. At 2:38 p.m., Martin's father sent an internal memo marked confidential. It was short, brutal. Subject, Succession Planning Reassessment. 2. Executive Leadership Team from Chairman Emeritus. Effective immediately, I am requesting a full review of our leadership pipeline, with emphasis on recent strategic decision-making related to personnel. Coordination to follow with board oversight. Translation? Who let this happen, and why are they still in charge? I could only imagine Martin reading it, the blood draining from his face one paragraph at a time. Not because it was loud, but because it was quiet, cold, surgical. He was never mentioned by name. He didn't have to be. Later that night, Redbridge's internal Slack channels lit up with welcome messages. Holy hell, is this the Cal Brennan? Please tell me we get to see her diagrams. I heard she built Onyx's entire compliance pipeline from scratch. Didn't she design the adaptive sandbox protocol that's still unbroken? One of the newer engineers pinged me directly, just a smiley face and, looking forward to learning from you. No flattery, no politics, just respect, the kind that doesn't need explaining. At home, I poured a glass of wine and reread the announcement once more, not because I needed to, just because it felt good to see the name I built attached to something that finally gave it room to breathe. It wasn't just a new job, it was a signal to every vendor, every partner, every quiet builder still stuck under someone else's glass ceiling. We're not gone. We just moved next door. 3 weeks is all it took. Redbridge moved fast, because I moved fast. The onboarding platform I'd once mocked up on a whiteboard during a lunch break at Onyx, half joking, half daring anyone to let me build it, was live. Not just live. Seamless. Clean architecture, modular scaling, real-time audit trail baked in. And most importantly, compliant to the bone. SOC2, ISO 27001, and even the newer SBOM requirements, checked and logged before first deploy. The tool went public with barely a hiccup. One of our senior engineers said, "This thing feels like it already knows what I'm trying to do." I just smiled. It should. I built it from the same blueprints Martin ignored because they didn't come with a Gartner endorsement. By Friday, Redbridge had shaved 17% off client onboarding time across 5 business units. Our support team called it a miracle. Our sales team called it a weapon. Onyx called it a problem. 2 of Martin's directors stepped down that same week. No press releases, just quiet exits, logged as personal decisions. Internally, I heard Lydia, still stuck managing what was left of the old architecture, escalated a critical risk report, flagged it under institutional knowledge degradation, which, translated, meant, we've broken things we don't know how to fix, and the people who could have helped don't work here anymore. Audit picked it up fast. Too many access gaps, too many processes tied to now deactivated credentials. One particularly bold sentence from the findings made it into an investor briefing. Key system documentation was never fully transferred post-transition, resulting in compliance fragility. Fragility. Funny word, that. You never see it used until a structure starts cracking. The next Monday, a blog post from a mid-tier industry site surfaced titled, "The Cal Brennan Effect: How Losing One Engineer Exposed an Entire Company's Weaknesses." It wasn't flattering. It was clinical. Redbridge's announcement, my system rollout, Onyx's internal turbulence. It connected the dots slowly, methodically, and made Martin look like a kid who lit a match in a fireworks warehouse just to impress his friends. Investors started asking questions, the kind you don't answer in earnings calls. What systems did she take with her? Who signed off on the termination package? Did we verify IP transfer clauses before the departure? I wasn't even watching the fallout actively. People sent me screenshots like postcards from a war zone I'd already left behind. Most came with a version of the same caption. They really didn't know who you were, did they? The message that got my attention, though, wasn't from a colleague. It came through the Redbridge client portal, an official booking request. From him, Martin's father, the founder. Subject line, request for discussion, confidential. I clicked it once. Just enough to confirm the ID. The old man had gone quiet the day I left. No public statement, no apology, just vanished behind the marble walls of the boardroom like he always did when Martin made a mess he didn't want to clean up himself. And now here he was, scheduling time on my calendar through my new firm. No secretary, no assistant, just a direct request, slotted neatly between a vendor debrief and a scalability sync. I accepted it without comment. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't coming to make things right. He was coming to understand the cost. And I was ready to show him the receipt. He walked in alone. No entourage, no assistant trailing behind with notes and coffee. Just a leather folio under his arm, the same type he used to carry back when the company had a staff of 20 and still held meetings in the back of a sandwich shop. He didn't offer a handshake, didn't sit right away, just stood in the doorway of the Redbridge conference room, taking in the walls, the sleek monitors, the clean lines of a space designed for people who actually built things, not just approved them. "I'm not here to poach you back," he said quietly, eyes scanning the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling glass. "That would be inappropriate." His voice was thinner than I remembered, a little slower, like the weight of the last few weeks had finally caught up. "I didn't come for apologies," I said, motioning toward the chair across from me. "But you might want to sit." He did, not like a man in control, more like someone trying to remember what control had ever felt like. "I need you to understand," he said. "Letting you go was never my intention." I believed him. That's what made it worse. He didn't even know. He let his son run unchecked, let him fill the org chart with noise and posturing and strategic realignments while the people who held the foundation were quietly buried beneath it. "Martin made a decision," I said, fingers laced together on the table. "I made one too." He nodded once, not in agreement, more like resignation, like he was hearing it for the first time in a language he finally understood. "I trusted him," he said. "That's my fault. I thought he understood what mattered." "He understood the margins," I replied. "Not the mechanics, and definitely not the people." He flinched. Barely. but enough to register. There were no accusations in the room, no anger, just the kind of silence that follows structural collapse. After the dust settles and you're left standing there, blinking through debris, wondering what held everything up in the first place. He opened the folio but didn't take anything out. Maybe there was a document inside. Maybe a proposal, but I think he knew better than to slide anything across the table. That kind of move belonged to a different timeline, a version of the story where I didn't already have what I needed. I read your audit logs, he said after a moment, from last quarter, before you left. You flagged 3 vulnerabilities Martin never addressed. I didn't answer. I assume Redbridge patched them? They didn't exist in Redbridge's system, I said, because I never let them in. He nodded again, slower this time, letting it settle. I studied him for a moment, the man who once called me the company's quiet backbone, who handed me a bonus check when we landed our first federal contract, who used to stop by my desk to ask how things actually worked, before legacy became legacy and he started trusting titles over track records. Now, sitting across from me, he looked tired, and for once, silent. The hierarchy had shifted, not because someone took power, but because someone finally realized who had it all along. He didn't ask for anything at the end, not a return, not forgiveness, just sat with the weight of his own oversight, of a system he built, then abandoned to someone who never understood the schematics. When he stood, I stood too. He didn't say goodbye. He just nodded. And this time, I didn't nod back. Some legacies don't need rewriting, they just need remembering, by the people who forgot who wrote the first line. It was a Thursday when Alec pulled me into his office. No fanfare, no preamble, just handed me a folder and said, "We'd like to make it permanent, but on your terms." Inside was the equity package, not just some token slice of pie to keep me compliant, but a real stake, substantial, tangible, the kind of offer that doesn't just recognize what you've done, but lays the foundation for what you're about to build. I didn't need to negotiate. They'd already asked what I wanted a week prior, quietly, without posturing, and they'd listened. Every clause, every vesting schedule, every clause tied to decisions I hadn't made yet but would. It wasn't just a contract, it was trust. Signed in ink, backed by infrastructure, and written in the language I understood best. System continuity, I signed it. Not out of spite, not because I wanted to prove anything to Martin, but because Redbridge never once asked me to be louder. Just more me, and that was all I needed. The next day, Onyx released a press statement. Martin Renner has decided to step down from his role as CEO to pursue new ventures. The board thanks him for his contributions and leadership. That was it. No quotes from the founder, no gushing tributes, just a single photo, cropped tightly, neutral background, the kind of shot companies use when they're trying to forget someone without making it look like they are. The internal chatter spilled out within hours. Apparently, the board vote had been swift. Lydia texted me a single line. He didn't even pack his own office. The vacuum left behind was palpable, but not chaotic, because once the wrong person leaves, things don't fall apart. They stabilize. Quietly, naturally, like a system finally purging corrupted code. Redbridge, meanwhile, kept building. We launched our sandbox simulation suite 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Our support backlog dropped by 23%. One of the investors stopped by my desk during a tour and said, "So you're the reason Alec's been sleeping again." I just smiled. Didn't need to say a thing. Back at Onyx, their new interim CEO was already circulating press quotes about restoring operational excellence. I didn't care. That chapter had closed the moment Martin slid that termination letter across the table without even saying thank you. Now, my name was on systems that worked, contracts that held, diagrams that people actually read. And most of all, I was surrounded by a team that didn't just need what I could build. They trusted that I'd already started building it before they even knew what to ask for. Loyalty isn't about who you stayed with. It's about who showed up when you didn't have to. It was late, just past 11 when the message came in. My office light was still on, but I wasn't working, just sitting there watching the city blink below the windows, the quiet hum of well-built infrastructure keeping everything afloat, the kind of night where silence doesn't feel empty, it feels earned. The message popped up on my old private thread with Mason, one of the junior devs I mentored back at Onyx. Smart kid, rough edges, had a knack for spotting pattern inconsistencies even before the dashboards flagged them. His text was short, informal, the kind of message you only send if you're still trying to process the stupidity of other people's decisions. Is it true they let you go without asking what you were working on? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened my Redbridge portal, pulled up the internal badge registry, and took a screenshot. My name, Cal Brennan, Lead Systems Architect. Division, Infrastructure Continuity, Status, Active, with a little green circle next to it. I sent it. No caption, no explanation. He replied 2 minutes later. That's the dumbest 240K decision I've ever seen. I leaned back in my chair, let the cursor blink, then typed one line. It wasn't a 240K mistake. Paused. Typed the next line. It was an 80 million one, and hit send. Because that was the real number, the value of the deals Onyx lost the month after I left. The long-term contracts they failed to renew, the federal security bid they were disqualified from because the continuity lead listed on the compliance framework, me, was no longer affiliated with their infrastructure. They tried to replace code with confidence, process with posture, people with personas, and they lost, not all at once. But in all the ways that matter, the silent kind of loss, the kind that doesn't scream but echoes, across contracts, across clients, across time. I stood, finally turning off the lights in the office, left the phone on the desk, let the systems hum around me, steady and intact. I hadn't needed to burn bridges, I just built something better on the other side.